Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the massive alien courtroom. The ceiling stretched so high above her that she could barely see it through the strange purple mist that filled the air. Around her, thousands of alien beings sat in rows that seemed to go on forever. Their eyes were all fixed on her small human form. Elena tried not to show how nervous she felt. She had been chosen to represent all of humanity today. After 30 years of contact with the galactic community, this was the day they would finally learn where humans stood in the universe. The day they would receive their official classification. The lead judge was a creature called a Vorthek. It looked like a giant tree made of silver metal, with dozens of thin branches that moved like arms. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind blowing through caves. The Galactic Consortium has completed its study of the species known as humans, the Vorthek announced. Its words echoed through the vast chamber. We have observed your kind for 3 decades. We have studied your history, your culture, your technology, and your behavior. Elena felt her heart beating faster. Everything depended on this moment. Humanity's future in the galaxy would be decided by whatever classification they received. She knew there were different levels. Some species were marked as apex predators and given seats on the ruling council. Others were labeled dangerous and heavily restricted. A few lucky ones earned peaceful status and enjoyed full trading rights. Before we announce our decision, the Vorthek continued, let us review what we have learned about humanity. A massive screen appeared in the air above the courtroom. Images of Earth began to play. Elena watched as scenes from human history flashed by, ancient wars between tribes, the building of great cities, the development of technology, space travel, first contact with alien races. Humans are a young species, said another judge. This one was a Zephyrian, a being that looked like it was made of living crystal. Its body caught the light and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. They have existed for only a few 100,000 years. Most galactic species have histories spanning millions of years. Their technology is primitive, added a third judge. Elena recognized this one as a Mindari, a floating creature that lived inside a bubble filled with glowing liquid. The Mindari spoke without moving its mouth, sending thoughts directly into everyone's minds. They have barely learned to travel between stars. Their weapons are crude. Their computers are simple. Elena wanted to argue, but she knew better. She had been told to stay silent unless asked to speak. The humans who had sent her here had stressed how important it was not to anger the judges. More images played on the screen. Elena watched clips of human conflicts, wars between nations, riots in cities, arguments in their own United Nations. The judges seemed particularly interested in these scenes of fighting and disagreement. Humans are highly aggressive, the Zephyrian noted. Their history is filled with violence. They fight over resources, territory, and ideas. Even now, in their modern age, conflicts continue on their homeworld. They are also deeply divided, the Mindari added. Unlike most successful galactic species, humans have never achieved true unity. They split themselves into hundreds of different nations. They speak thousands of different languages. They follow many different religions and belief systems. Elena felt her heart sinking. This was not going well. Every observation seemed to be pointing toward a negative classification. However, the Vorthek said, and Elena felt a tiny spark of hope, we have also observed positive traits in humanity. New images appeared. These showed humans helping each other during disasters. Scientists working together to solve problems. Artists creating beautiful works. Families caring for their children. Humans show remarkable creativity, the Vorthek continued. They adapt quickly to new situations. They are capable of great compassion and sacrifice for others. They have a strong drive to explore and learn. But, the Zephyrian interrupted, these positive traits are overshadowed by their fundamental weaknesses. The screen changed again. Now, it showed charts and graphs that Elena couldn't quite understand. Numbers and data about human population, technology levels, and military capabilities. Let us be clear about humanity's limitations, the Mindari said. Their individual lifespans are extremely short. Most humans live fewer than 100 years. This makes it impossible for them to develop the long-term thinking necessary for galactic leadership. Their military technology is laughably weak, the Zephyrian added. Their largest weapons could barely damage a single patrol ship from any major galactic power. They pose no threat to established civilizations. Most importantly, the Vorthak said, humans lack the genetic stability necessary for reliable partnership. They evolve too quickly, their cultures change too rapidly. They cannot be trusted to maintain consistent policies over the long periods required for galactic commerce. Elena felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had known this might happen. Many humans back on Earth had warned that the aliens might not see their value. The three judges conferred among themselves for several minutes. Elena could not hear what they were saying, but she could see other aliens in the courtroom whispering to each other. Some seemed amused. Others looked bored, as if this was just another routine matter. Finally, the Vorthak raised one of its metallic branches for silence. The Galactic Consortium has reached its decision regarding the human species, it announced. Elena held her breath. Based on our extensive observations and analysis, we hereby classify humanity as threat level 0. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. Threat level 0 was the lowest possible classification. It meant humanity was considered completely harmless. This classification comes with the following restrictions and permissions. The Vorthak continued, as if reading from a shopping list. Humans are permitted to establish colonies in up to 3 star systems of their choosing, provided these systems contain no other intelligent life. Elena tried to hide her disappointment. 3 systems. Out of billions in the galaxy. Humans are granted limited trading rights with approved galactic merchants. They may export raw materials and basic manufactured goods. They are prohibited from purchasing or attempting to reverse engineer any technology above Class C level. Class C technology was barely more advanced than what humans already had. Elena realized they were being offered almost nothing. Humans may maintain a defensive fleet of no more than 50 vessels. These ships must be equipped only with approved weapon systems and may not exceed Class B specifications. 50 ships to defend 3 entire star systems. Elena almost laughed at how ridiculous it was. Finally, the Vorthak said, humans are welcome to participate in galactic cultural exchange programs and may establish diplomatic missions on approved worlds. The judge paused, looking down at Elena with what might have been pity. Do you accept these terms on behalf of humanity? It asked. Elena wanted to scream. She wanted to tell these arrogant aliens exactly what she thought of their insulting offer, but she knew she had no choice. Humanity was new to the galaxy. They had no allies, no leverage, no way to fight back against civilizations that had existed for millions of years. I accept, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Excellent, the Vorthak said. Welcome to the galactic community, humans. We look forward to a long and profitable relationship. The courtroom began to empty as aliens filed out, chatting among themselves. Elena caught fragments of their conversations. Harmless little things, aren't they? Might be useful for mining operations. I give them 2 centuries before they destroy themselves. Perfect for entertainment purposes. Elena stood alone in the vast chamber, feeling smaller than she ever had in her life. She thought about the billions of humans back on Earth who were waiting to hear the news. They had dreamed of joining a great galactic civilization as equals. Instead, they had been labeled as harmless pets. As she walked toward the exit, Elena passed a group of Zephyrians who were laughing together. One of them noticed her and spoke, loudly enough for her to hear. Look at the little human, it said, so serious about everything. They actually think they matter. Give them a few toys to play with, another replied. Keep them busy, they'll be grateful for whatever scraps we throw them. Elena kept walking, but she memorized every word. Something deep inside her burned with quiet fury. These aliens thought they knew everything about humanity. They thought they had humans figured out. They had no idea how wrong they were. Later that day, Elena sat in her small quarters aboard the human diplomatic ship. She stared out the window at the alien space station where the hearing had taken place. Thousands of ships from dozens of different species came and went, conducting the business of a galaxy that had just declared humanity irrelevant. She picked up her communication device and prepared to send a message back to Earth. The leaders of every human nation would be waiting to hear the results. But before she began recording, Elena made herself a promise. The aliens thought humans were harmless. They thought humans were weak, divided, and unimportant. They had given humanity the smallest possible role in galactic affairs. Someday, Elena thought, they would learn just how wrong they were about humans. Someday, the galaxy would discover that there was a big difference between being harmless and choosing to be peaceful. For now, humanity would accept their role. They would play by the aliens' rules. They would be the grateful little species, happy with their 3-star systems and their toy spaceships. But Elena knew something the aliens didn't understand. Humans were very good at learning, they were very good at adapting. And they were very good at remembering who had treated them with respect and who had treated them like children. The galaxy thought it had humanity figured out. The galaxy was about to learn how dangerous that assumption could be. 25 years had passed since that terrible day in the alien courtroom. Captain Marcus Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars stream past through the viewport. The ship was one of only 47 vessels in humanity's entire space fleet. The aliens had been very specific about that number. Marcus remembered being a child. When Dr. Vasquez had returned from the consortium hearing, he remembered the celebration that had turned into disappointment when people learned about humanity's new status. His parents had tried to explain it to him in simple terms. The aliens thought humans were like pets, they said. Useful pets, but pets nonetheless. Now Marcus was 34 years old and captain of his own ship. The Defiance was not impressive by galactic standards. It was barely 200 meters long and carried only basic weapons. The aliens had made sure that human ships could never threaten anyone important. But it was his ship, and he was proud of it. "Captain," called Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communications station. "We're receiving a message from Kepler Station. They're ready for the supply delivery?" "Thank you, Lieutenant," Marcus replied. "Set course for the station. Standard approach." Kepler Station was one of humanity's 3 permitted colonies. It orbited a gas giant in the Kepler system, about 12 light-years from Earth. The station was home to 50,000 humans who worked in the mining operations. They dug up rare metals that the aliens wanted, and in return the aliens gave them just enough technology to keep working. Marcus had made this supply run dozens of times. Food, medicine, and equipment from Earth went to the station. Raw materials came back. It was boring work, but it was important. The colonies were humanity's only foothold in the galaxy beyond Earth. As the Defiance approached Kepler Station, Marcus noticed something unusual on the sensors. There was another ship in the area, but it wasn't responding to communications. The ship was drifting about 1,000 kilometers from the station. "Lieutenant Kim," Marcus said, "scan that unknown vessel. What can you tell me about it?" Sarah worked at her console for several minutes. "It's not in our database, Captain. The design is completely unknown. But the ship appears to be dead in space. No power readings, no life signs." Marcus studied the image on the main screen. The ship was strange-looking, with curves and angles that didn't match any known alien design. It was about the same size as the Defiance, but clearly much older. Parts of the hull were damaged, as if the ship had been in a battle long ago. "Captain," said Commander Torres from the tactical station, "we should report this to the station authorities." "Unknown ships as supposed to be reported immediately," Marcus nodded. "That was the rule?" Humans were required to report anything unusual to their alien supervisors, but something about this ship made him curious. In 25 years of human spaceflight, they had never found anything like this. "Send a message to Kepler Station," Marcus ordered. Tell them we've found a derelict vessel and we're going to investigate before making our delivery. Sir, Commander Torres said carefully, our orders are to go straight to the station. No detours, no unauthorized activities. The ship could be a navigation hazard, Marcus replied. We're just being careful. It was a weak excuse, but Marcus was the captain. His crew followed orders even when they weren't sure about them. The Defiance moved closer to the mysterious ship. Up close, Marcus could see that it was even older than he had thought. The hull was scarred by countless small impacts from space. Debris, whatever this ship was, it had been drifting for a very long time. I'm reading faint power signatures, Sarah reported. Some kind of emergency backup system is still running. Any sign of the crew? Negative, Captain. But there might be automated systems still functioning. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Prepare a boarding party. I want to know what this ship is and where it came from. An hour later, Marcus floated through the airlock of the alien vessel. The artificial gravity was not working, so he and his team moved through the corridors using magnetic boots and handholds. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls. The ship's design was completely unlike anything humans had seen before. The corridors were wider than they needed to be for humans, and the walls were covered with symbols that looked like no known alien language. Captain, called Ensign Rodriguez from up ahead, I think I found the bridge. Marcus pushed himself through the doorway and stopped in amazement. The bridge was huge, with stations for at least 20 crew members. But what caught his attention were the bodies. Skeletons in strange armor were still strapped into their chairs. The bones were not from any species Marcus recognized. They were too long and thin to be human, but they didn't match any of the known galactic races either. These beings have been dead for a long time, said Dr. Palmer, the ship's medical officer. Based on the bone structure, I'd say they were very tall, maybe 3 meters. Definitely not any species we know about. Marcus moved to what looked like the captain's chair. Next to the skeleton, he found a small device that was still glowing faintly. When he touched it, the device projected a holographic display filled with text and images. Can anyone read this? Marcus asked. I'm running it through the translation protocols, Sarah said, studying her portable scanner. The computer is having trouble with the language, but it's starting to make sense of some words. As the translation program worked, Marcus explored more of the bridge. He found storage compartments filled with data crystals. Whatever this ship was, its crew had left behind a lot of information. Captain, Sarah said excitedly, you need to see this. The translation is starting to work, and what I'm reading is incredible. Marcus hurried back to where Sarah was working. The holographic display now showed images that made his blood run cold. Pictures of planets being destroyed. Fleets of ships fleeing through space. And most shocking of all, images of the Galactic Consortium. According to this log, Sarah said, her voice shaking, this ship belonged to a species called the Kethver. They were classified as Threat Level 0 by the Consortium about 800 years ago. Marcus felt his heart pounding. What happened to them? Sarah continued reading from the display. The Kethver were given the same deal as humanity. 3. Star systems, limited technology, restricted fleet size. They accepted the terms and tried to build a peaceful civilization. And then, after 200 years, the consortium decided the Kethver were no longer useful. They accused them of violating their territorial restrictions. The consortium fleet attacked without warning. Marcus stared at the holographic images of burning planets. How many survived? According to this, very few. The Kethver tried to fight back, but their weapons were too weak. Most of their people were killed. The survivors scattered across the galaxy. Marcus realized what he was looking at. This ship was a refugee vessel, carrying the last survivors of a species that had been wiped out by the same aliens who now controlled humanity. Keep reading, Marcus ordered. I want to know everything. As Sarah worked through more of the data, the full horror of the situation became clear. The Kethver logs contained detailed information about something called Project Harvest. It was a long-term consortium plan for dealing with harmless species. The process was always the same. First, the consortium would study a new species and classify them as threat level 0. Then they would offer limited membership in galactic society. The species would be grateful for any recognition and would work hard to prove themselves worthy. For a few centuries, the arrangement would work well. The harmless species would provide cheap labor and raw materials. They would be useful and obedient, but eventually they would start to grow. Their population would increase. Their technology would improve. They would begin to want more than their original agreement allowed. That was when the consortium would act. They would find or create an excuse to declare the species dangerous. Then they would use their superior military force to eliminate the threat. The process had been repeated dozens of times over thousands of years. "Captain," Sarah said quietly, "there's more." The logs contain information about other species that went through the same process. The HFY weren't the first. They weren't the last either. Marcus studied the data with growing horror. Species after species had been granted threat level 0 status. All of them had eventually been destroyed when they outlived their usefulness. The galaxy was full of dead worlds that had once belonged to civilizations the consortium had classified as harmless. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked. Sarah checked the timeline data. Based on the pattern, species usually last between 2 and 4 centuries before the consortium turns on them. Humanity has been part of galactic society for 25 years. Marcus did the math. Humanity might have another century or two before the aliens decided they were no longer useful. Or it might happen much sooner if humans grew too quickly or asked for too much. "We need to get this information back to Earth," Marcus said. "People need to know what we're really dealing with." But as the boarding party prepared to leave the alien ship, Marcus found something else. Hidden in the captain's personal quarters was another data crystal. This one contained different information. Technical specifications for weapons and ships. Star charts showing hidden bases where refugee populations might still be hiding. Most importantly, it contained the locations of other derelict ships like this one. "Sarah," Marcus said, "how many of these refugee ships do you think are out there? Based on this data, maybe dozens? Possibly hundreds. Ships from all the species the consortium has destroyed over the years." Marcus realized that humanity was not alone. Somewhere in the dark spaces between the stars, survivors of the consortium's genocide were still hiding, still waiting, still hoping for a chance to fight back. "Set course for Earth," Marcus ordered as they returned to the Defiance, maximum speed. "What about the supply delivery to Kepler Station?" Commander Torres asked. "The station can wait," Marcus replied. "This information is more important than any cargo we're carrying." As the Defiance jumped to hyperspace, Marcus stared out at the stars and thought about the future. For 25 years, humanity had accepted their role as the galaxy's harmless pets. They had been grateful for whatever scraps the aliens threw them. They had worked hard to prove they were worthy of respect. Now Marcus knew the truth. The aliens would never respect humanity. They would never treat humans as equals. Eventually, when humans were no longer useful, the consortium would find an excuse to destroy them, just as they had destroyed dozens of other species. But unlike the previous victims, humanity now had advance warning. They knew what was coming. And Marcus was determined to make sure his species was ready when the time came to fight for their survival. The galaxy thought humanity was harmless. The galaxy was about to learn how dangerous a cornered animal could be. Admiral Sarah Kim stood in the war room deep beneath the surface of Luna Earth's moon. The room was filled with the most important military leaders from every human nation. 3 years had passed since Captain Marcus Chun had discovered the truth about Project Harvest. 3 years of secret preparations that were about to be put to the ultimate test. The wall screens showed images from across human space. Earth hung blue and beautiful in one display. The colonies at Kepler Station, New Geneva, and Proxima Base appeared on others. All of them looked peaceful and normal. But Sarah knew that was about to change forever. "Status report," Sarah ordered. "General." Martinez from the European Federation spoke first. All ground forces are in position. Every major city has hidden weapon caches and prepared resistance cells. If they come for Earth, we'll be ready. Space Forces ready, reported Admiral Chun. Marcus had been promoted after his discovery of the alien ship. Our real fleet is hidden in the asteroid belt. The consortium still thinks we only have 47 ships. Sarah nodded. For 3 years, humanity had been living a massive lie. Officially, they still followed all the alien restrictions. They appeared grateful and harmless. But in secret, they had been building a true military force, the hidden shipyards. In the asteroid belt had produced over 300 warships. Human scientists had studied every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on. They had reverse-engineered weapons and shields that were supposed to be beyond their reach. Most importantly, they had made contact with the remnants. The survivors of the consortium's previous genocides had been waiting in the dark spaces between stars for centuries. When Marcus had followed the coordinates from the Kethver ship, he had found them. Species after species that had been declared extinct still lived in hidden bases. Carved into asteroids and rogue planets, the remnants had shared their knowledge freely. They had given humanity advanced technology and tactical information about consortium military doctrine. In return, humanity had promised something the remnants had almost given up hope for, a chance to fight back. "Sir," called Lieutenant Park from the communications station, "we're receiving priority transmissions from all 3 colonies. They're reporting unknown ships approaching their systems." Sarah felt her stomach drop. After 3 years of preparation, the moment had finally arrived. Put the messages through. The first transmission came from Kepler Station. Commander Wilson's face appeared on the main screen, his expression grim. "Admiral, we have 12 large vessels approaching our position. They're not responding to our communications, but the ship designs match consortium military profiles." The second message was from New Geneva Colony. 14 unknown ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're taking position around our planet. We're requesting immediate orders. The third transmission from Proxima Base was cut short. The colony administrator had just started to report incoming ships when the signal went dead. "Any response from Proxima?" Sarah asked. Lieutenant Park worked frantically at his console. "Nothing, Admiral. All communications with Proxima Base have stopped." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. Proxima Base was home to 2 million humans. If the consortium had attacked without warning, those people were probably already dead. "Alert. All units," Sarah ordered. "Operation Homecoming is now active. All hidden forces are cleared to engage." Across the room, officers began sending coded messages to secret military units throughout human space. On Earth, resistance cells moved to their assigned positions. In the asteroid belt, the hidden fleet powered up their weapons and prepared for battle, but Sarah knew it might already be too late. The consortium had chosen their moment perfectly. They had struck at all 3 human colonies simultaneously, just as their historical pattern suggested they would. "Admiral," General Martinez said quietly, "we should contact the aliens, try to negotiate." "Maybe we can still avoid a full war," Sarah looked at him with sad eyes. "General, the time for negotiation ended the moment they fired on Proxima Base. The consortium has decided humanity is no longer useful. Nothing we say will change that now." As if to prove her point, a new transmission appeared on the main screen. It was not from any human source. Instead, the image showed a Vorthak in full military dress standing on the bridge of a massive warship. "People of Earth," the alien said in its wind-like voice. "This is Commander Veltar of the Galactic Consortium, Peacekeeping Force. You are hereby ordered to surrender all military assets and prepare for immediate relocation." The Vorthak paused, its metallic branches moving in what might have been satisfaction. "Your species has violated the terms of your galactic membership. Intelligence reports indicate you have been developing prohibited technology and maintaining military forces beyond your authorized limits." Sarah almost laughed. The aliens were reading from the same script they had used for centuries. Accuse the victims of breaking rules, then use that as justification for genocide. Any resistance to this lawful action will be met with appropriate Force, Commander Veltar continued. To demonstrate our resolve, the illegal settlement at Proxima Base has been subjected to corrective bombardment. Similar action will be taken against any location that refuses to comply. The transmission showed images of Proxima Base burning from orbit. The colony's domed cities were shattered ruins. The spaceport was a crater of melted metal. 2 million humans had been murdered in less than an hour. You have 12 hours to respond, the Vorthak concluded. Surrender unconditionally or face the consequences of your aggression. The screen went dark. For a moment, the war room was completely silent. Then General Martinez spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. They really did it. They're actually trying to wipe us out. Sarah turned to face the assembled officers. These men and women had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, but she could see the shock in their eyes. Knowing something was coming was different from actually experiencing it. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah said firmly, the Galactic Consortium has just declared war on humanity. They have murdered 2 million of our people without warning. They have demanded our complete surrender or total destruction. She paused, looking each officer in the eye. I have only one response to their ultimatum. We will not surrender. We will not relocate. We will not bow down to these genocidal monsters, who have been slaughtering innocent species for thousands of years. Sarah moved to the tactical display showing the positions of Consortium forces. Hundreds of alien ships were taking position around Earth and the remaining colonies. Their firepower was overwhelming by conventional standards. They think they know everything about us, Sarah continued. They think we're still the same harmless species they classified 28 years ago. They expect us to panic and beg. For mercy, Admiral Chun stepped forward. What are your orders, Admiral? Sarah looked at the display showing Earth surrounded by enemy ships. Her home planet, where billions of humans lived normal lives without knowing they were about to become targets in an alien war of extermination. Send the activation signal to all remnant forces, she ordered. Tell them the time has come. Then, contact our hidden fleet. I want every ship ready for combat in 30 minutes. What about the colonies? Asked General Martinez. Kepler Station and New Geneva are still under threat. Our people there know the plan, Sarah replied. They'll hold out as long as they can while we prepare our response. As officers hurried to carry out her orders, Sarah continued to study the tactical situation. The Consortium had made one critical mistake in their attack plan. They had positioned their forces around human settlements, expecting easy targets, but they had no idea that humanity's real military strength was hidden elsewhere. Admiral, Lieutenant Park called out, we're receiving a message from the hidden fleet. Admiral Chin's ships are ready to engage. And the remnants? Confirming. Activation, sir. Fleet elements from 12 different species are moving to assault positions. Sarah felt a grim satisfaction. For the first time in galactic history, the Consortium was about to face organized resistance from their victims. Not just one species fighting alone, but a coordinated alliance of survivors who had been waiting centuries for this moment. Open a channel to all human forces, Sarah ordered. Military and civilian, I want everyone to hear this. When the communications officer nodded, Sarah began to speak. People of humanity, this is Admiral Sarah Kim speaking from Fleet Command. 28 years ago, the galaxy told us we were harmless. They gave us a small corner of space and told us to be grateful. We accepted their judgment because we believed in peace. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. Today, that same galaxy has shown its true face. They have murdered our people at Proxima Base. They have surrounded our worlds with warships. They demand our surrender or our extinction. Sarah paused, thinking of the 2 million people who had died at Proxima Base, men, women, and children, who had been living peaceful lives until alien warships turned them to ash. The Galactic Consortium believes it can wipe us out like it has wiped out dozens of species before us. They think we will break and beg for mercy. They think we are still the harmless little pets they classified all those years ago. Sarah's voice turned cold as winter steel. They are about to learn how wrong they are. Humanity is not harmless. We have never been harmless. We simply chose to be peaceful. But when peace is no longer an option, humans know how to fight. She looked around the war room at the officers preparing for battle. To every human listening to this message, remember what we learned from the remnants. The consortium has been doing this for thousands of years. They study species, classify them as harmless, use them until they're no longer needed, then exterminate them. It's a pattern they've perfected over millennia. Sarah's voice grew fierce with determination. Today that pattern ends. Today, humanity and our allies strike back. Today, we show the galaxy that some species refuse to go quietly into extinction. As she finished speaking, alerts began flashing across the tactical displays. Consortium. Ships were beginning to move into attack positions around Earth and the remaining colonies. All units, this is Admiral Kim, Sarah broadcast to the fleet. Execute Operation Homecoming. Show them what happens when you corner a species that refuses to die. In the asteroid belt, 300 human warships began moving toward Earth. In the dark spaces between stars, fleets of alien refugees that the consortium thought were extinct powered-up weapons they had been preparing for centuries. The galaxy was about to learn that the harmless species they had tried to destroy had been getting ready for this moment since the day they were betrayed. And the price of that betrayal was going to be higher than anyone could have imagined. Captain Marcus Chun gripped the armrest of his command chair as the UES Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace. Around him, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, but he could feel the tension in the air. This was the moment they had all been preparing for. The moment humanity would finally fight back. Multiple contacts on sensors, reported Lieutenant Torres from the tactical station. Consortium fleet is holding position around Earth, just as intelligence predicted. Marcus studied the holographic display floating above his chair. 47 consortium warships surrounded his home planet, each one massive enough to carry thousands of troops. The aliens had come expecting an easy victory against humanity's pathetic little fleet. Communications, patch me through to Admiral Kim, Marcus ordered. Sarah's voice crackled through the speakers a moment later. Marcus, good to see you made it. What's your status? All ships in position, Admiral? The hidden fleet is ready for your signal. Excellent. Begin Phase 1 on my mark. Marcus looked around his bridge at the men and women who had volunteered for this mission. His ship was no longer the UES Defiance. That vessel had been replaced by something far more dangerous. The Vengeance was twice as large and carried weapons that the consortium had never seen before. All stations, prepare for combat, Marcus announced. Today we show the galaxy what humans can really do. The first phase of Operation Homecoming began with a surprise that shocked every alien commander in the system. What appeared to be empty space suddenly filled with ships as humanity's hidden fleet decloaked. 300 human warships materialized between Earth and the consortium forces. Contact! Shouted Commander Veltar on the bridge of the consortium flagship. How is this possible? Humans are restricted to 47 vessels. His tactical officer worked frantically at his console. Sir, I'm reading over 300 ships. These designs don't match anything in our database of human technology. Veltar stared at the display in disbelief. For 28 years, the consortium had monitored human space carefully. They knew exactly how many ships humans were supposed to have. This fleet should not exist. Open a channel to the human fleet, he ordered. Demand an explanation. But before the communication could be established, the human ships opened fire. Marcus watched as bright beams of energy lanced out from the Vengeance toward the nearest consortium ship. The alien vessel's shields flared and failed in seconds. The follow-up volley punched through the hull, causing massive explosions along the ship's length. Direct hit, Torres reported. Enemy vessel is losing power and atmosphere. All around them, the hidden human fleet was engaging the consortium forces with devastating effect. Ships that the aliens had dismissed as primitive were cutting through their defenses like they were made of paper. How are their weapons so powerful? demanded Veltar as he watched 3 of his ships explode in rapid succession. Our intelligence, said human technology, was centuries behind ours. His science officer studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. Sir, these weapons are based on our own designs, but they've been modified. Somehow, the humans have improved on technology they weren't supposed to have access to. What the consortium didn't know was that humanity had spent 3 years studying every piece of alien technology they could find. The remnants had shared knowledge from dozens of destroyed civilizations. Human scientists had combined all of this information to create weapons that were better than anything the galaxy had seen before. Sir, the tactical officer called out, we're receiving additional contacts throughout the system. Ships are decloaking near all of our positions. Veltar turned to look at the system-wide display and felt his blood freeze. Hundreds of additional ships were appearing throughout human space, but these weren't human vessels. The designs belonged to species that were supposed to be extinct. Impossible, he whispered. The Kethver were destroyed 800 years ago. The Silthari have been extinct for 6 centuries. These species no longer exist. But the evidence was right there on his sensors. Ships from a dozen different extinct civilizations were moving to attack positions. The dead had returned to seek their revenge. On the bridge of the Kethver ship Remembrance, Captain Thelvas watched the human fleet engage the consortium forces. His species had been waiting 8 centuries for this moment. 8 centuries of hiding in the dark, keeping their culture alive, preparing for the day they could strike back at their murderers. Human Fleet Commander, he broadcast on an open channel. This is Captain Thelvas of the Kethver Remnant Fleet. We stand with you against our common enemy. Marcus heard the alien voice and felt a surge of pride. These beings had survived genocide at the hands of the consortium. Now they were fighting alongside humanity to ensure it never happened again. Captain Thelvas, Marcus replied, it's an honor to fight beside you. Let's show the consortium what happens when they underestimate their victims. The battle for Earth became a 3-dimensional maze of fire and metal. Human ships darted between the larger consortium vessels, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the aliens' heavy weapons. Meanwhile, the remnant fleets attacked from multiple directions, forcing the consortium to split their attention. Admiral Sarah Kim watched the battle from the command center on Luna. The tactical display showed her forces steadily gaining the upper hand, but she knew this was only the beginning. The real test would come when the consortium realized they were losing and called for reinforcements. Admiral, reported Colonel Hayes from intelligence, we're intercepting consortium communications. They're requesting immediate assistance from their nearest fleet bases. How long until those reinforcements arrive? Sarah asked. Best estimate is 6 hours for the first wave, 12 hours for major fleet elements. Sarah nodded. That gave them time to complete the next phase of their plan. Signal all units. Begin Phase 2. Phase 2 was the liberation of the remaining human colonies. While the main battle raged around Earth, smaller human fleets had been moving toward Kepler Station and New Geneva. The consortium forces at those locations had been expecting easy victories against helpless colonists. Instead, they found themselves facing coordinated attacks by ships that shouldn't exist. At Kepler Station, Commander Wilson had been preparing his people for the worst when the rescue fleet arrived. 12 human warships engaged the 14 consortium vessels that had been preparing to bombard the station. The alien ships, caught completely off guard, found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered. This is impossible, muttered Subcommander Kelter as he watched his forces being systematically destroyed. Intelligence said humans had no significant military capability. His communications officer looked up from his console with fear in his eyes. Sir, we're being jammed on all frequencies. We can't call for help. The New Geneva colony was liberated in similar fashion. Consortium forces that had been preparing to land troops for the occupation instead found themselves fighting for their lives against ships that moved like fighters but hit like battleships. Back at Earth, the tide of battle had clearly turned. Marcus guided the Vengeance through a complex attack run against the consortium flagship. His ship's weapons had been designed specifically to penetrate the energy shields that the aliens relied on for protection. Firing main guns, Torres announced. The Vengeance's primary weapons struck the Consortium flagship dead center. The massive ship's shields collapsed completely, leaving it vulnerable to follow-up attacks from other human vessels. Veltar is trying to retreat, Marcus observed as the alien flagship turned away from Earth. Don't let him escape. But Commander Veltar's ship never made it to the edge of the system. 3 remnant vessels intercepted it before it could jump to hyperspace. The flagship that had come to oversee humanity's extinction became just another wreck floating in space. As the last Consortium ships were destroyed or driven away, Sarah allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The first battle was won, but she knew the war was far from over. The Consortium had vast fleets scattered across the galaxy. When they learned what had happened at Earth, they would come in force. Admiral, Lieutenant Park called from the communications station. We're receiving a transmission from the Remnant command ship. The main screen showed an elderly Kethver with scars covering half his face. This was Fleet Commander Shander, the military leader of all the Remnant forces. Admiral Kim, he said in accented but clear English, your species has fought with great honor today. The Consortium learned that their victims are not as helpless as they believed. Thank you, Commander, Sarah replied. But this is only the beginning. They'll be back with more ships. Yes, Shander agreed, which is why we must strike first. The Consortium's strength comes from their belief that they are invincible. Today we showed them they can be beaten. Now we must press our advantage. Sarah studied the star charts that appeared on her display. The Consortium controlled thousands of worlds across hundreds of star systems. Their military bases were scattered throughout the galaxy. A direct assault on their core worlds would be suicide. What do you propose? Sarah asked. The Consortium has been destroying species for thousands of years, Shander explained. But they have grown lazy and overconfident. Their outer colonies are poorly defended. Their supply lines are vulnerable. We can hit them where they least expect it. As the two commanders discussed strategy, Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived at the command center. She was much older now, with gray hair and lines around her eyes. But her spirit was still strong. Admiral, she said quietly, I've been monitoring Consortium communications throughout the galaxy. News of what happened here is spreading fast. Their outer colonies are starting to panic. Sarah turned to look at the woman who had represented humanity at their classification hearing all those years ago. What are you suggesting, Doctor? Many of the species currently under Consortium control are classified as Threat Level 0, just like we were. They're probably wondering if they're next on the extermination list. Sarah began to understand. You think some of them might be willing to rebel? I think some of them might be willing to fight for their freedom if they believed they had a chance to win. Fleet Commander Shander's scarred face showed what might have been a smile. The human doctor speaks wisdom. The Consortium's empire is built on fear. But fear works both ways. If we can show other species that the Consortium can be defeated, their empire will start to crumble from within. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the wreckage of Consortium ships floating around Earth. Humanity had won its first victory, but the real war was just beginning. The galaxy had classified humans as harmless and then tried to destroy them. Now it was time to show the galaxy the price of that betrayal. All fleet commanders, Sarah broadcast to the combined human and remnant forces, prepare for extended operations. We're taking this fight to the enemy. It's time to liberate the galaxy. In the command center of the UES Vengeance, Marcus Chun looked out at the stars and smiled. The aliens had thought they knew everything about humanity. They had thought humans were weak, divided, and helpless. They were about to learn how dangerous it was to underestimate a species that refused to die quietly. Admiral Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Liberation as it dropped out of hyperspace above the Consortium's capital world. 2 years had passed since the battle for Earth, and the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. What had started as humanity's desperate fight for survival had become a war of liberation that spread. Across hundreds of star systems, the massive planet below them had been the center of galactic civilization for over 10,000 years. Its gleaming cities housed the consortium's ruling council, their military command, and billions of citizens who had never imagined their empire could be threatened. Today that would change forever. Fleet status report, Sarah ordered. All ships. In position, Admiral, replied Captain Torres from the tactical station. Human forces number 800 vessels. Remnant allies have contributed over 1,200 ships from 17 different species. Sarah looked at the holographic display, showing the massive fleet surrounding the capital world. Ships from species that the consortium had tried to wipe out now flew together under a single banner, the banner of liberation. Any response from the planetary defenses? Negative, Admiral. They're not even trying to communicate. Looks like they're preparing for a siege? Sarah wasn't surprised. The consortium had never learned how to negotiate as equals. For 10,000 years, they had ruled through fear and superior firepower. When that failed, they had no other options. The war had not gone as anyone expected. After the victory at Earth, Sarah had thought the consortium would send massive fleets to crush the rebellion. Instead, something much more dangerous had happened. The idea of resistance had spread. Species after species had risen up against their consortium overlords. Worlds that had been classified as threat level 0 suddenly revealed hidden military capabilities. Trade partners who had seemed loyal for centuries turned their weapons against consortium forces. The empire that had seemed unshakable began to crumble from within. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as Secretary of Liberation Affairs, joined Sarah on the bridge. She carried a datapad filled with reports from across the galaxy. The final tallies are in, Elena said quietly. 47 star systems have declared independence in the last month alone. The consortium now controls less than 30% of their former territory. Sarah nodded grimly. The numbers told the story of an empire in collapse, but they also represented billions of lives lost in the fighting. The consortium had fought every retreat with devastating brutality, destroying entire worlds rather than letting them fall into rebel hands. What about the Zephyrian home system? Sarah asked. Still holding out, Elena replied. But their government has sent secret messages asking about surrender terms. I think they're ready to switch sides if we guarantee their safety. The Zephyrians had been one of the consortium's founding members, but even they could see that the war was lost. More and more of the major species were looking for ways to abandon the sinking ship. Admiral, called Lieutenant Park from communications, we're receiving a transmission from the planet. It's coming from the High Council chambers. Put it through. The main screen showed the interior of the consortium's ruling chamber. The three judges who had classified humanity as harmless 28 years ago stood before their seats. Looking much older and more desperate than Sarah remembered, the Vorthak judge spoke first, its metallic branches trembling slightly. Admiral Kim of the Human Forces, we wish to discuss terms. Sarah almost smiled. After 2 years of war, after the destruction of hundreds of consortium worlds, after the liberation of dozens of oppressed species, the aliens finally wanted to talk. I'm listening, Sarah said simply. The Mindari judge floated forward in its bail suit. The Consortium Council is prepared to recognize human independence. We will withdraw all forces from your territory and acknowledge your right to exist as a sovereign species. In exchange for what? Sarah asked. Cessation of hostilities, the Zephyrian judge replied. An end to this destructive war that has consumed the galaxy. Sarah looked around her bridge at the officers who had fought beside her for 2 years. These men and women had seen the mass graves on liberated worlds. They had witnessed the evidence of genocide that stretched back thousands of years. They knew what the consortium really was. You want us to stop fighting, Sarah said slowly. To accept our independence and leave you alone to continue ruling the rest of the galaxy? The alternative is the complete destruction of galactic civilization. The Vorthak replied, Your rebellion has already caused unimaginable damage. How many more must die before you are satisfied? Sarah felt anger burning in her chest. Even now, facing total defeat, the aliens tried to make themselves the victims. You want to talk about death? Sarah's voice turned cold. Let's talk about the 47 species you've exterminated over the last 5,000 years. Let's talk about the Kethver, who trusted you until you burned their worlds. Let's talk about the Silthari, who served faithfully for 8 centuries before you decided they were inconvenient. The 3 judges looked uncomfortable. They had never expected their historical crimes to be exposed. Those actions were taken for the greater good of galactic stability, the Mindari said weakly. And Proxima Base? Sarah continued. 2 million humans murdered without warning because we were no longer useful. Was that for the greater good too? Captain Marcus Chin's voice came through the communication system from his position with the assault fleet. Admiral, enemy defense. Platforms are powering up weapons. Looks like they're going to fight after all. Sarah turned back to the judges on the screen. You have one chance to end this peacefully. Complete and unconditional surrender. The consortium government will be dissolved. All member species will be granted full independence. You will face trial for crimes against sapient life. The Vortex branches rustled with what might have been outrage. Impossible. The consortium has maintained galactic peace for 10,000 years. We will not surrender our authority to a pack of primitives who have existed for barely a moment in galactic time. Then you've made your choice, Sarah said. All units begin. The final assault. The screen went dark as the consortium judges cut the communication. Around the capital world, nearly 2,000 ships from dozens of different species began moving toward their targets. The battle for the consortium capital was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The planet's defenses were formidable, built up over millennia to protect the seat of galactic power. Massive orbital stations armed with weapons that could destroy moons opened fire on the approaching Liberation fleet, but the attackers had advantages. The defenders couldn't match. They fought with the fury of the oppressed seeking justice. They used tactics learned from dozens of different military traditions. Most importantly, they fought as allies rather than subjects. Captain Chin led the first wave of ships through the defensive perimeter. His vessel, now called the UES Remembrance in honor of the Kethver allies, carved through the enemy formation with weapons that combined the best technology from 17 different civilizations. This is for Proxima Base, he muttered as his guns tore apart a consortium battle station. On the planet's surface, the fighting was just as fierce. Liberation forces had been infiltrating the capital for months, preparing for this moment. When the space battle began, hidden rebels struck at key targets throughout the city. The consortium's government complex, a massive crystal structure that had stood for thousands of years, became the focus of the final assault. Here, the last remnants of the alien leadership had barricaded themselves with their most loyal troops. Admiral Sarah Kim led the final attack personally. She wanted to look the consortium judges in the eye when their empire finally fell. Her assault team fought through corridors lined with alien art and historical displays celebrating 10,000 years of galactic rule. The judges were found in their council chamber, still sitting in the same seats where they had classified humanity as harmless nearly 3 decades ago. They looked smaller now, defeated and afraid. It's over, Sarah announced as her soldiers secured the room. The consortium is finished. The Vorthak judge raised its metallic head with what might have been defiance. You think you've won something. Here, you've destroyed the only force that kept the galaxy stable. Without the consortium, there will be chaos. Species will war against each other until civilization collapses. Sarah walked closer to the alien leader. You're wrong. The galaxy doesn't need masters, it needs freedom. Over the following months, the predictions of chaos proved false. The liberated species, freed from consortium rule, began forming new alliances based on mutual respect rather than fear. Trade resumed between worlds that had been cut off from each other for centuries. Scientific knowledge flowed freely without consortium restrictions. The trials of consortium leadership became a symbol of the new galactic order. For the first time in galactic history, those who had committed genocide faced justice for their crimes. The evidence presented during the trials revealed the full scope of the consortium's atrocities, ensuring that such horrors would never be forgotten. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now serving as Earth's representative to the new Galactic Liberation Council, stood before the assembled delegates from hundreds of species. The chamber was located on a neutral world, chosen specifically because it had no connection to the old consortium. 30 years ago, Elena said, addressing the crowded hall, "My species was classified as threat level 0. We were told we were harmless. We accepted that judgment because we believed in peace." She paused, looking out at the diverse gathering of beings who had once been subjects of the consortium. What the consortium never understood was that being peaceful and being harmless are not the same thing. They mistook our restraint for weakness. They confused our diversity for division. They thought that because we were young and small, we could be easily controlled. Elena's voice grew stronger as she continued. They were wrong about humanity. But more importantly, they were wrong about the nature of freedom itself. No species, no matter how advanced or ancient, has the right to decide the fate of others. No empire, no matter how powerful, can suppress the desire for liberty forever. The delegates listened in absolute silence. Many of them had fought in the Liberation War. All of them had suffered under consortium rule. Today we establish a new principle for galactic civilization, Elena concluded. Never again will any species be classified as harmless or disposable. Never again will diversity be seen as weakness. Never again will the strong be allowed to prey upon the weak without consequence. The chamber erupted in applause from 100 different species. The sound echoed through the halls like thunder, carrying with it the promise of a better future. Admiral Sarah Kim watched the ceremony from her quarters aboard the UES Liberation. Through her window, she could see ships from dozens of worlds working together to establish the new order. Humans served alongside Kethver Siltheri and dozens of other species that had been written off as extinct. A message came through her personal communicator. It was from Captain Chun, now commanding the exploration fleet that was searching for more survivor populations in the galaxy's unexplored regions. "Sarah," his voice crackled through the speaker, "you need to see this. We found another group of survivors in the Andromeda region, a species called the Talketh. They've been hiding from the consortium for over 2,000 years. Sarah smiled. Every month brought new discoveries. Species that the consortium had thought destroyed were emerging from hiding across the galaxy. Each one carried knowledge and culture that had been presumed lost forever. "Bring them home, Marcus," she replied. "There's room in this galaxy for everyone." As Sarah looked out at the stars, she reflected on how much had changed since that day in the consortium courtroom. The aliens had classified humanity as harmless because they saw only what they expected to see. They had tried to destroy humanity because they feared what they didn't understand. But the galaxy had learned an important lesson. The most dangerous thing in the universe was not the species with the biggest weapons or the longest history. It was the species that refused to give up hope. Humanity had been ranked as harmless. The galaxy had betrayed that trust and tried to commit genocide. In the end, they had paid the ultimate price: their empire, their power, and their right to rule others. The galaxy belonged to the free now, and it would stay that way, protected by species that knew the true cost of liberty and would never let it be taken away again.